Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Decryption, and I hope you are well. So in a previous tutorial, we set up a cheat system, old school, where you type a command and something activates. So if I type big head mode, everybody gets big head modes because it's activated the cheat. I can type it again to cancel it out, or I can type another cheat such as mother load in order to give myself tons of money and unlock a new area. You can see I now have 10,000 coins. And that's all good. However, it doesn't work on a controller, which kind of sucks because a lot of people will use controllers. So in this tutorial, what we're going to do is advance this system one more step by allowing it so you can not only choose the commands you can type on a keyboard, also the ones you input on a controller. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually just jump into a basic dev map, just so the game runs a little bit quicker, because pressing play means we have to wait for quite a while. And at least now when I tap play, it's almost instantaneous to jump in and do stuff. So if you've not watched a previous tutorial, it is going to be required for this, but the basic gist of it is, on our player pawn, or you can do it on your controller, we have this any key event set up that basically gets the current key that's being pressed, logs it into an array. When that array gets to a certain length, it then combines it into a text asset, and then it runs a timer to clear that text asset out. When that array is over 5 indexes long because you've pressed a lot of things, then it will move on to checking it again. If it's over 20 characters, we're assuming the player's just spamming, so we clear it out not to break anything. But if not, then we go down and check if it's a viable cheat. And if it is, we execute the cheat, spawn it in, and run it. That's the basic gist of it. However, we need to modify this so it also works with a controller, because at the moment, you type something in such as motherload, we use that to look up the data table, and we just get the row name here. However, you can't type things in on a controller because it doesn't really map to a normal language if you wish. So we need to find an alternative way around this. So the first thing we're going to do is jump into our cheat command or struct here, and this is what builds up the list of cheats. And it's basically built up with a description just so we can see what it does, and then the blueprint that needs to activate it. We don't need to do anything for the PC keyboards because that's just going to use the row name built in. So in this cheat command, what we're going to do is add a new variable, and I'm just going to call it controller keys. And I'm going to set this to a type of key, and I'm going to set it to an array. The reason I'm using an array instead of just text is it's going to be far easier to figure out what a controller's cheat is by looking at the array of it rather than it would be at looking at the text. So what you'll see with this one is it now lets us come over to here and say for motherload, I can add a bunch of keys, and we'll say down, left, right, X, square. Yeah, we'll do that. And you can see it's a lot easier to distinguish what that is. And now that should work for most controllers, if you wish. If you've got something like a VR controller, you may want to add VR keys or even create a specific data table for that controller scheme. Because as far as I'm aware, you can't actually distinguish a platform in blueprints alone. You have to use C++. And we're trying to stay away from that just for now. So now that we've done that, let's add another key to our big head mode as well. So for this one, I'll do up, down, left, right, and we'll do circle, triangle. Not very imaginative, but it should work. The key thing is, just make sure that it's over 5 long, because in our main cheat thing, right, during the checking, to make sure we're not running it all the time, we make sure that you've at least put 5 keys in. And that counts for whether you're typing it in or you're putting the keys in. Next, we need to kind of tidy this up a little bit because it is very messy and it's getting confused with a lot of other things. So I'm going to drag this down here, and I'm actually going to select all of this and just move it to its own event graph. So I'm going to cut it using Ctrl X, add a new event graph called cheats, and just paste it in. It'll say a function doesn't exist, just click confirm and then click compile, and it should show you the ones which it doesn't like, which you can just refresh like so. What else have we missed? This one over here, it's just expiring again. There we go. So nothing's changed, we've just cleaned it away so it's not in the middle of our main event graph. So most of this is going to be fine, but the bits we need to change is down here. So this bit here basically caches all of our cheats names, so the ones down here, and compares it if it exists for what we've typed in. However, that's not going to work for a controller because, as you can see, it's going to print all of this out, which isn't going to be the same as motherload or big head mode. So what we can do is here, where it finds it, if it returns -1 true, we're currently ignoring it because we're not doing anything. But what we can actually do is check, are you on a controller? If you are, then we can proceed down checking it a different way. So what I'm going to do is right at the top up here, I'm going to drag off of this key and do is gamepad key, and it'll give us a boolean here. This boolean will tell us whether we're using a controller or a keyboard. So I'm going to promote this to a variable called cheats last platform, and I'll make sure it's inside my cheats category. I'll make this private shortly, but for development I'm going to keep it publicly accessible so we can see it, and I'm just going to cache that. So that means if you start typing something on a controller, it will check the controller's cheats and it'll ignore the PC one because we don't need it to check that. And it's very unlikely someone's going to type half a cheat on one device and half a cheat on another. In that case, it's just not going to work, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. So right all the way down here, where we're checking for the finding here, what I'm actually going to do before I run any of this is make a bit of space, and I'm going to drag off of this and add a branch. And I'm then going to drag in our cheats/platform, and I've just realised cheats/platform is the worst name we can do for that. We'll call it cheats/platform gamepad, so we actually know it's a gamepad. If it's false because it's not a gamepad, then it'll just run the normal PC checks. That's fine. However, if it's true, then we can actually check the controller version. So how are we going to check an array of keys that we've import against the array of keys here? Because these aren't just normal strings, they're actual key pressers. So it's super simple. I'm going to come and create a new function called check controller keys. So I'm going to drag in our cached cheats here, which is something we cache on the cheats up here. So all the names. And then from here, I'm going to for each over it. And then I'm going to drag off the array element and do get data table row. So this is now going to let us loop over every single row in that cheat. And I'll set the data table to our DT cheats, like so. And then from the out row, we can break, and you can see we've now got access to our controller keys. However, we need to convert this to an array so we can check it against our cheat text that we've typed in, which is them all combined. So I'm going to loop over the controller keys as well and drag it to row found. Then I will drag off the array element and do get key display name, like so. And we want the long version, that's okay. And then I'm going to just promote this to a local variable, make sure it's a local one, and then I'm going to delete it instantly, just so it sets the correct text. And I'm going to come and set it to current controller, and then from here, I can format. Then I'll drag the current controller cheat back in as a set. I'll drag back off of it and do format. And then just like we did on the previous one, I can do old in curly brace and then new in curly brace. Meaning the old one will be our current controller cheat, and then the new one will be our keys, like so. It's just a way of adding all of the cheats together in one text. So if I was to print this out, it would essentially look the exact same as this, but with no spaces. So it'd be gamepad D-pad up, gamepad D-pad down, gamepad D-pad left, all the way. And now that we've done that, on the completed, after it's run over all the keys, we can now check it against our current key to see if it's a valid cheat. So I'm going to take our current controller cheat, and I'm going to say equals, and we'll do case insensitive, because then it means doesn't matter if it's capitals or not. And then I will drag in our cheat text and plug it in. I'll add a branch and connect it to the completed. Now if this is true, it means we've successfully found the cheat. So I'm just going to straight away return, because we know exactly what we want. And then I want to put this out variable into the return. So I'm just going to promote this to a local variable called current cheat line and connect it all up. And then down here, I can drag our current cheat line in and just push it into the return like that. Found cheat. If it's false, it means that it doesn't know what this one is. So then I'm just going to completely reset the controller cheat. and then it will come all the way back over here, go to the next line, and then rerun itself again. And it will check all of the control keys. In this case, we've got 2, so it'll check all of that, until it finds one. So the other thing I'm going to return is actually just a boolean to say whether or not we've found it. So I'll just do has found, and then on here I'll just tick it. All the way back over here on this completed, I'll just do another return, but make sure it's unticked so it doesn't find it. They're the only 2 returns you need. But now what this lets us do is back on our cheats here, just after we've checked if it's a gamepad, we can drag this function in and then add a branch. If it's true that it's actually found the cheat, then we can almost replicate all of this. So I'm actually going to come and grab all of this and copy it, because we will shape it in a minute. And I'll just come and paste it all the way underneath all of this. But I'm going to promote it to a custom event. So I'll do add custom event, run cheat. So for the asset class, I'll just drag it back over to here and connect it to there. But we know that it's not just a standard object. It's actually a type of BP cheat that we set up last time. And I'm just going to make sure it's a soft class reference. And I can connect this down to here as well, and it'll all sync up. And then if we just double check over here again, that is all we need to do. So I can now delete all of this here. And I can just simply call run cheat. And I can pass it to the row found there. I can also copy this, pass it up to here on the true because it's found it. And then from the found cheat, we'll do break and pass in the cheat blueprint likes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, in theory is it. There is a few minor optimizations I want to make shortly, which we will look at doing. So one minor thing that's a bit biting us because of optimization techniques is we're only checking if we've got over 5 keys, which we do have 6. But on the 6th one, it's coming in and saying, is the cached cheats empty? Well, yeah, it is, because we've not checked for a cheat before. Then just run this. So technically, you need a 7th to come and do it, which I'm not a great fan of. So I'm actually just going to connect this down to the set as well, and then make some room with all of this here. Just a bit like that. So what it's basically going to do now is, after you've typed more than 5 keys in, so you've typed 6, it's then going to come and cache the cheats if it's got it, and then check the cheats. Otherwise, if it's already got cheats, it's not going to recache it. It will just come and check the cheats. I hope that makes sense. It's like an optimization we've tried to put in to try and make it a bit easier. So now if I press up, down, left, right, star, X, you can see we now have 10,000. Whilst that one's not super easy to spot, let's do up, down, left, right, the circle, triangle. We now have big heads. How cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? And I've just discovered my controller is backwards. If I press down, it looks up. That doesn't feel right at all. Definitely need to change that at some point. But let's see if the cheat turns itself off. Up, down, left, right, circle, triangle. The cheat successfully goes off. How cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? So one minor thing I would like to do just to patch on to the end of the tutorial is it's not blatantly obvious when a cheat's ran. So if we put big head mode in, sure, it tells us. If I put a cheat in like so, do we know it's worked? What if I just press loads of keys? Well, we don't know. We can check for the cheat, but we need a way for it to tell us the cheat's activated. So some games just do sounds, make a ping sound or something. Some games show a UI to say a cheat's been activated. I think that's the way I'm going to go with this part, is we're just going to say, once a cheat's been activated or deactivated, we will show a little UI, probably up here or down here or something, just popping in really quickly saying cheat activated or cheat deactivated and disappearing. That's it. Just so we know. And we could also add the sounds in. I'll show you where to do that. So on our ALS character BP, where we go and run the cheats here, we'll just double click and come down here. So we come in and we actually spawn it and call activate cheat. Now the reason we spawn it in and then call it is because when we spawn it in, it very well may need to initialize something before it activates it. So we're just calling activate afterwards because it gives us a little bit of flexibility. So for most cheats, it will just call activate and then destroy itself. However, for something like big head mode, it actually deactivates itself if it needs it. And the best way in design, when you're planning a framework, is to try and only put your framework in the minimal places you need it. And what I mean by that is we could come into every single cheat and add in show deactivate, show activate, and then we go into the mother load, show activate, and then we go into 15 other cheats and go show. But that's going to be a bit crazy. We can, of course, add it into the BPA parent here, but we haven't actually got any way of saying whether it's been activated or deactivated because not every cheat needs it. So in order for that, what we need to do is actually present it some way of saying the cheat's been activated, do something with it. Because on the mother load, we don't actually ever report that it's been activated or deactivated. Whereas on the big head mode, we store it on the game instance. We don't need to store that on mother load because it's a one-time deal. So what I mean by all of this is if we go back to BPA game cheat here, I'm actually going to come and add a custom event down here. So I'll do add custom event, cheat finish. Then I'm going to add a Boolean input to it called cheat activated. And the reason I'm doing this is we can now add a branch in, and we've got a way of determining whether we need to show the confirm UI, as in the cheat has ran, so that's for mother load or big head mode turning on, and then false if, well, not mother load at all, but big head mode has been turned off. So all we need to do with cheat finished is just make sure we actually call it on activate cheat. By default, I'm just going to say it's been activated, because that's what most things are going to do. So now that we've got this, I'm going to jump into each one of these, and then just before it destroys it, I'm actually just going to come and call finished, like so. And then the cheat activated for this one will be ticked. For the big head mode, we've actually got two places we need to call it. So I'll come off of the remove and do cheat finished, and I'll keep it unticked. And then for the other one, I will do the same thing, but tick it and connect it back to the destroy. So one other optimization we can do just to make it a bit nicer is we can actually move destroy actor inside cheat finished, because we don't need it on every single one. But if we did need one that sits in the world and constantly changes, for example, a blueprint that stays in the world and constantly rains meteors down, for example, we may not want to destroy that one just yet. So I'm actually going to come and cut destroy actor back to our parent, and then just after the branch, I'm going to put destroy actor here. We will eventually link it up after we've called the UI in the middle. But one other thing I'm going to do is add another Boolean, should destroy. And then I'll add a branch again at the end, and if it's true, we'll just make it call destroy actor like so. And then this means back on our big head mode, should we destroy it? Yep, on both, because we store that on the game instance, so I can compile and save. Mother load, should we destroy this? Yep, we should do. But on the meteor raining one, we'll untick should destroy because it shouldn't, and we'll have something else down here that checks if the cheat's been reactivated, finds the blueprint, and then destroys it. Something like that. So now let's work on the UI. So I'm going to come to my UI folder, and inside my WB HUD, this is just my main HUD that sits on the game. So on my HUD, I have pretty much everything that sits in the game ready to run at all times, like your quest updates, your interactions, your compass, and your tutorials. And I kind of like the tutorials formatting because it works for my game. So what I'm going to do is come and open up the tutorial prompts by clicking on it and clicking edit. And it's got the design that I want here for a single one. So I'll open the single one up, and I'm actually just going to come and copy the overlay with the children inside it. And I'm going to copy that. I'm going to close it off and go back to my HUD and just paste it inside here like so. I'll rename the overlay to O_cheat notify, and I can set it into the same position or roughly wherever you want it to be. So for me, I think I will put it just below this one here. So I'll click the anchors, hold Control and Shift and put it to the right side. And then I'll move it across by 50 and then up by 400, up by 200. So it just sits next to it like so. So if you've got a tutorial on screen, it'll pop out there. If you've got the cheats under it, it'll pop out there. Then we don't need the prompts input, so I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm actually just going to rename this to WB Cheat Text. I'll set this cheat text to cheat activated. I'll put an exclamation mark like so. And then by default, I'll set the overlay so it's collapsed so we don't see it. And I'll make sure it's a variable. I'll hit compile and save. So let's just quickly animate this in just so it looks nice. I'll go to my animations. I'll click the plus for the animation and I'll call cheat toggle. I'll make sure to add the overlay, like so. And then I'll click the little plus, and let's just set the render opacity to 0 right at the start. I'll click the plus again, and I'll get the transform. I'll add a keyframe at the beginning. I'll open up the transform and translation, and I'll just move it outside the window just by dragging this x-axis like so. And then I'll make a keyframe, and then I'll drag, say, half a second. I want it to now be visible. So I'll set the render opacity to 1, and then I'll set the translation back to 0 like so. And as you can see, we'll now have it fading in and dragging in like so. So now there are two ways you can hide it once you've done with it. You can either set a timer, wait for the timer, and then hide it. But for something so simple like this that I don't really want to customize that often, all I'm actually going to do is just stretch out the animation. So for the length of the animation is the length that the text is visible. So I'll come back over here, I'll say it has to be active for 3 seconds. So that'll be 3.5. So I'll make a keyframe for the translation and the render opacity. And then back to 4, which is another half a second. I'll set it back to 0 opacity. And then I'll drag the translation back to, I think it was -400. Let's try 400. And then I'll just tick on a keyframe automatically like that. So now you can see it will fade in. It'll say cheat activated. And then, oh, it is fading out. So let's just make sure we know why. It's set to render opacity 0 there. So we'll make it 1. Because it wants to be the same as that, essentially. So if we play it, it comes in, it stays there, it waits for a bit, it hides itself. That's simple. So for sounds, I've bought this asset pack a while ago from Invenzia, a YouTuber who does games and modeling and stuff. He's got this universal sound FX pack here, and he's got a bunch of other sounds as well that I really should take a look at. I didn't know he's released loads more music, actually. But yeah, so this pack is great. I always find myself using it. And the sound I've ended up picking is this one here, which I think just works really nicely for what I need. So I've imported that into Unreal, and I want that to play every time you activate a cheat. So when the animation comes in, all I'm going to do is add a new audio track, and it'll say this about a clock. Just click yes. And then on the audio, I'll click the plus, and I'll search for my cheat activated sound, and I'll place it roughly where I want it, so probably about there. And then you can see when we play it, it says cheat activated, it'll wait, and then it'll disappear. Yeah, perfect. If you want to do more to it, you can. For me, that's perfectly fine. Now, the only other thing I'm going to do is back on the graph, I'll add a custom event down here. So add custom event called cheat updated. I'll add a Boolean input to it called activated. And then I will grab the name of the text here, so cheat text, make sure it's a variable. I'll then drag this in, and I'll set its text, like so. And then I'm going to make some space and drag back off of the text and do select text, like so. And then we can drag the activated into pick A. If it's pick A, I'll do cheat activated exclamation mark. If it's pick B, cheat deactivated exclamation mark. And now we've set the text, I'm going to come and grab the animation, drag it in, drag off, and do play. And just before we tell it to play the animation, I'm going to make some space, drag in our cheat notify, and set the visibility to non-hit testable. Don't set it to visible, because then if you've got any UI elements there that you want to click on, it will block it and it'll be a bit messy. And then for optimization's sake, just so we're not rendering it unnecessarily, I'm going to copy this back to our animation. I'm going to add an event graph, an event track trigger, right at the end as it's making it invisible and it's fading away. Just before the end, I'll add a keyframe. I'll double click it on the event track, and now I can come in and set the visibility to collapsed. I don't know if setting it to collapsed is more performant. It feels like it is, because even though it's off the screen, it doesn't have to worry about it or keep it in memory. It just removes it away. If you are copying my series almost fully, there is one last little thing you'll need to do, is if you're just using the custom text here for the tutorial prompts text, you can't just do the set text. You have to get the text block within it. So if I come here, this text isn't just text, it's actually text within text here. It was just easier at the time, and I may end up removing it, but for now, just get the text within it if you're doing the same as me. So if I go back to the BPA game cheat here, I can now right click and do get my player controller, And then from here, I've got a custom interface event where I can do get player HUD. If you haven't got this, all it is on my player controller, on begin play, I create the UI and store it as a variable. And then I've got a function here as an interface called get player HUD that simply returns it like that. It means I don't have to keep casting to the controller everywhere. And it makes it really easy to just do stuff like that. So I'm going to delete the branch because we don't actually need it now. I'm going to drag back across to player HUD, drag off the HUD and do cheat updated like so. I'll pass in the cheat activated boolean and then I'll make this carry on to the branch afterwards to destroy itself. And if we try it now, if we come into the game, if I type the big head mode, up, down, left, right, circle, triangle, we now have big head mode. It says cheat activated. If I deactivate it, cheat deactivated. How cool is that? I can even come and type in motherload, and at least it tells us now that the cheat's been activated. It's so much more nicer on the game. There is our controller-based cheats and UI adjustments for the cheat system. So I can do all sorts of cheats now, like big head mode and motherload, where we get extra money. We can now even deactivate them, so it doesn't look so silly when we come and burn this tent here. So thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that was helpful. If you've got any other suggestions you would like to see, maybe I add some more cheats, maybe we do something else, like you want a UI where you type it in old school that way, or you go to a specific menu, something like that. Let me know if you want to see anything else from that. Thank you for watching. My name is Decryption, and I will see you next time.